Propulsion continues to be normal. RCP chamber pressure looks good. Doubling up.
Water towers fly! Tango down phenomenal.
Letting out the lead off. But again, let's lead off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
Eight days after leaving the Kennedy Space Center, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins successfully returned to Earth after achieving what is arguably humanity's greatest moment, taking our species' first step on another world. Marking the occasion of their safe return, one of the most trusted voices in history, Walter Cronkite, observed then and years later the gravity of the moment with the following. The lunar age has begun, and with it mankind's march outward into that endless sky from this small planet circling an insignificant star in a minor solar system on the fringe of a seemingly infinite universe. We are the lucky generation. We first broke our earthly bonds and ventured into space. From our descendants, perches on other planets or distant space cities, they will look back at our achievement with wonder, at our courage and audacity, and with the appreciation with our accomplishments, which assured the future in which they live. From that momentous day in July 1969 for the Apollo generation, to the dawn of the Artemis generation today, live from Launch Complex 39B at the Kennedy Space Center. This is coverage of the first launch of the SLS rocket to send the Orion crew capsule and the European Service Module on a 37-day test flight around the moon and back again. And DOS, what a day this should be for Florida and the world space agencies and programs who are going to the moon with us this time. Hey, Chris, good morning, and thank you for that intro. Folks in chat, let us know if you can hear us and see that big orange rocket on the screen. John Galloway for NASA Spaceflight here, ready for another bit of marathon coverage for the first launch, the second launch attempt of Artemis I here, like Chris said, out from Kennedy Space Center, LC-39B, Cape Canaveral, Florida. Give me some 5x5s in chat and make sure that everything is ticking along here correctly today. Whew! All right. I think we're doing well. I'm just waiting on chat to catch up a little bit here so that we are ready to go. Bear with us this morning. Got a little bit of, as always, the last minute technical gremlins, but we are going to make sure everybody can hear what we're saying here. Got a ton of 5x5s in chat. All right, I think we can start the show proper here now. Let's run through who's going to be on the stream with us today. You, of course, just heard the voice of Mr. Chris Gebhardt. Chris, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Oh, well, there's literally today nowhere else in the world I would be. I can't even say rather be, like literally, like I would not be anywhere else but right here. Absolutely. Of course, Chris is the assistant managing editor for NASA Spaceflight. He'll be here doing commentary in our marathon. Like I said, it is a long way until launch. You can see the clock is currently holding at T-minus 6 hours and 40 minutes, but we're more than that away from 2:17 p.m. open of the window. Also with us in the studio today, we have Mr. Philip Sloss. Philip, how are you doing this morning?
Doing well, and we have some breaking news, which is that the mission management team is go for tanking again. So we're ready to go here.
I like it. Philip jumps right in with the with the status update there that we are go for tanking. That sounds like good news, doesn't it?
Yep, it's basically they hand it off to the launch director, Charlie Blackwell Thompson, and when they get to that point in the timeline, then she will give the final go to the team to start the operations.
All right. We'll have quite a few other people here with us, y'all. I believe we may have Mr. Jack Beyer with us this morning as I talk a little bit, so he has a chance to unmute. Jack, we got you on comms?
Indeed. I'm sitting here next to Chris G, which is precisely why I said indeed. I'm looking at the clock, and I'm looking at SLS across the turn basin, and there some lightning just happened. This is quite a morning, quite a day for a test flight, and the whole crowd just chants, "Moon! Moon! Moon!" as we eagerly await today's launch.
Excellent. Of course, Jack is out there. He's going to be on commentary here in just a little bit. He's also going to be doing some camera operations for us. We have all sorts of stuff here planned for you. You'll know the drill. We go live early because I'm sure that people have a lot of questions about the mission and the rocket and everything that's going on. And so we have a marathon bit of coverage here. We'll be answering your questions. We'll be talking about what to expect, where we are in the timeline, giving live status updates, the whole thing across the board with the NSF team here. So let's hop right into that. Philip, do you want to give us a little bit of an overview? I think we've learned a couple of things in the last couple of days in terms of where the mission was on Monday, the issues that they encountered, why they didn't get that launch, and what they've done to mitigate that for a launch attempt today.
Sure. It's we actually were kind of talking about it during the troubleshooting on Monday morning. Basically, this was the first time that they got to do this liquid hydrogen bleed, which is basically to chill the engines down to the temperature and pressure that they need to be at start. And this is the first time that they got to do that on the launch pad at Kennedy. And so they saw some data that they were that they weren't expecting to see, and I think they decided during the countdown, which they had to deal with a lot of issues on Monday. They started a little late because of lightning, and then they had an issue with a liquid hydrogen leak, which they were able to work around, and so they were a little late going into it, and then they ran into this problem a couple of hours later, and basically they just decided to knock off the launch attempt. And that was a long day. They all went home and got some sleep, I think, like everybody did, and then they came back in the next day and took a look at the data. And after looking at all of the data, they realized that the sensor that they were using for one of the three engines, and of course everybody knows now it's engine 3, was the sensor is not exactly accurate. And so they have a lot of the logic basically goes you're flowing liquid hydrogen, which is not exactly at the exact same temperature all the way through a line. Some of it's colder, some of it's warmer. And so what they were seeing basically is the sensor that was giving them funky readings was saying that you're flowing cold hydrogen through the engine. They're seeing a colder value upstream of it and a colder value downstream of it, and somehow in between those it's warmer. So they were basically able to look at that, plus looking at the pressures that they're seeing. Pardon me. And basically they were able to, they were talking about the physics doesn't work out for that sensor to be accurate. And so they've had some issues with it through the testing campaign. And so they worked on what they call flight rationale in case they see this again, which I would not be surprised if they see something slightly different today. But if they see this again today, they're likely to continue. And so they basically, as we were talking about on Monday, they really didn't have to go in and physically change anything in that system. They basically worked on a procedural change. And so what they did do is they did go out to the pad and look at the issue with the hydrogen leak. And that turned out to be similar to an issue they had in April. And basically what they did was this was a leak on the outside of the vehicle. So again, we're talking about liquid hydrogen a lot. They had essentially some loose fittings, and so this is a fitting they could get to that's outside the vehicle. They took it apart, there's this thing called a purge can, which is basically gives them the ability to sense if there's hydrogen leaking around these huge loading lines that go into the vehicle and out of the vehicle. And so they found a loose fitting. They reassembled everything, torqued all the bolts down again, and those are the main things that they did. And so, basically, we're after doing all of that analysis, we're back here ready to go on Saturday morning.
Excellent. Folks, so to summarize what Philip said there were a couple issues on Monday. The issues were understood. I think the biggest one there was that temperature reading on one of the engines, Engine 3, everybody's favorite engine. I guess on Monday it wasn't maybe everybody's favorite engine, but they did determine that the sensor reading was not trustworthy. They came up with a way to look at other things around the sensor, like literally if you're flowing so much cryogenic fluid on this side and you got this amount of cryogenic fluid coming out the other side, temperatures, pressures, flow rates, then you know that it's going through the engine, and if it goes through that engine for X amount of time, you would expect the engine temperature to be at a certain value. Even if the sensor didn't read that, if you have those other sort of like, what do they call it? Witnesses, I think was the term they used in the press conference. If you had those other sort of witness values, you could say, well, it's going in, it's coming out, the rate going in, the rate going out, all these things match up. I think at one point they said that the sensor reading didn't match the physics of the situation. So they've come up with a way to gain confidence or have confidence that that engine is correctly chilled. In fact, I believe on the press conference, Philip, they said that on Monday, the engine did reach the correct temperature. It was just that the sensor didn't say that it reached the correct temperature. And now they know they have other ways that they can be confident that that all the engines, not just 3, are going to reach the correct temperature. Did I get that correct?
You did, and the only thing I would add to that is that if each engine has its own bleed line that comes down from the core stage, and each bleed line has one of these sensors, and it's also sort of important to note that it was only the sensor on the bleed line to engine 3 that had the issue. So the other engineering sensors that they were looking at on the other 3 lines were returning good data and consistent data, and that's another part of how they were able to look at the data and know that it's a faulty sensor, not anything else in the system.
All right. So I think the real question for us is, do we have to stop selling the shirt? Because we made a shirt.
I can honestly say this. Aerojet Rocketdyne loves this shirt because I've been told this by numerous Aerojet employees. They love this shirt because it doesn't blame Engine 3.
It is. It's just part of the process, right? Bleeding Engine 3 is part of the chill down process. And so the shirt is still accurate. It's not specifically blaming Engine 3. I don't know. Can we keep selling the shirt, or do we have to take it out of the shop?
No, I think we can keep selling it. Keep selling it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We gotta get that done today. We gotta bleed Engine 3 today. We didn't
It's
get that
correct.
done on Monday.
We don't want to have to repeat again. We want Engine 3 to bleed. We want, regardless of what the temperature sensor says, we want to have a high level of confidence that the temperature of Engine 3, specifically so those bearings don't slip out, is correct. And maybe everybody on the team should be wearing this Bleed Engine 3 shirt. Folks, we made this for fun. Again, it's all part of the process going through. I have a feeling it may not be particularly relevant. I think that if SLS launches today, we may just take this out of the shop. So if you want one of these shirts that's going to be sitting in your closet forever, basically, and then 20 years down the road, your kids can ask, what the heck does this mean? You can explain how you were there for the launch of the moon rocket. Go ahead,
or
there was
like
a problem.
Yeah, or like if you just want to buy it, so like as the symbol to others that like I know, like I'm in the know, like that nod across the coffee shop, right?
There's a couple different colors and stuff like that. It's got our logo on the back, but let's get that off the screen. That may very well not be in the shop anymore at the end of this stream. We shall see. But good luck to the temperature sensors today and the bleed lines on all the engines, not just Engine 3, as we come up on another launch attempt for SLS. Again, if you're just joining us, we do have a launch window that opens at 2:17 Eastern Daylight Time. That's in the afternoon here. Somebody help me out. We've got a clock on the screen. It says minus 6:40, like 6 hours and 40 minutes. I believe that's a T minus. But why is that clock holding right now, Chris? Why is that not counting down if they're going to ship this rocket today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So countdowns for rocket flights can either do one of two things. They can just start them at the exact time before liftoff that the mission is planned for, and the clock has no holds. So the T-minus time is also the time, the actual time to launch. This is everyone is familiar with this from the SpaceX point of view. This is how the Falcon 9s and the Falcon Heavies do their countdown. There are no built-in holds. But the other way to do a countdown is what SLS is doing right now, where you have your countdown, which has your T-minus clock, the time to T0. And T0 for SLS is SRB ignition and liftoff. And you can have holds in that in that countdown, and that means that there is a mismatch between your L minus, the time to launch, and your countdown time, which is the T-minus clock. So what we're looking at here is the T-minus clock, which is currently holding at 6 hours and 40 minutes. This is a 2.5-hour planned built-in hold ahead of the start of fueling operations. So this is when the team did their final weather review, got the go from weather that they were ready from that in a technical standpoint to tank. Charlie Blackwell-Thompson, the launch director, will give her final go for tanking here momentarily, and then they will start into that operation. Shortly after the fueling operation begins is when the countdown will resume. We will then count all the way down to T-minus 10 minutes if all goes well, and that will be the next hold point where we'll have a 30-minute hold at that point as well before doing the final polls and verification checks and then picking up the count. So at T-minus 10 minutes, when they pick up the count at T-minus 10, the T-minus and the L-minus clock will actually align and be the same. And that's what you in your count. That's why we have the L-minus clock and the T-minus clock today.
All right, give us just a second there. There we go. All right. little bit of a audio hiccup there, but we should be back. I believe we have audio back now. Chris, Philip, we have audio back.
I
I can hear
think we do indeed.
Okay, good deal. Whew, sorry about that, y'all. We're working on some audio issues there, but we were asking a question actually really quickly, and it was a question for Philip or Chris. How many gallons or liters of fuel is needed to get to the moon and back?
Well, that depends on your rocket and the payload you're trying to send and where you're trying to send it on the moon, which is the infuriating answer that does not actually answer your question. for this particular rocket, the way I can answer this question is the twin solid rocket motors each have about 1.5 million pounds of solid propellant in them each. So there's about 3 million pounds of propellant inside twin solid rocket boosters total. About 735,000 gallons of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen are loaded into the core stage of SLS. It's roughly 530,000 gallons of liquid hydrogen and 200,000 gallons of liquid oxygen, thereabouts. And then the ICPS also has a load of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. And then the European Service Module has mixtures of nitrates and monomethylhydrazine as its propellant. So it takes quite a bit for SLS to do its mission, and that is for a vehicle that is sized to bring 27 metric tons through translunar injection to the moon. So that's the answer for SLS Block 1. Other than that, it totally depends, because Rocket Lab, with their small satellite launcher Electron, just launched the Capstone mission to the moon. They obviously didn't have millions of pounds of fuel on board. So it's really dependent on the rocket you use, how much it's trying to throw through translunar injection, and exactly what orbit you're trying to get in the moon.
All right. So it's not, we can't just say like, okay, it's 18 million gallons, right? It's a little bit more complicated than that, because there's a couple different types, and then you have the hydrogen, and then you have the oxygen, that's the oxidizer you carry with you, and then you have the SRBs, which you don't really measure in gallons. Like, it is a little bit more complicated than just saying it is 1 million gallons, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Hey, just a quick update. So the launch director has now given the go to begin tanking. So Charlie Blackwell Thompson has given a go to begin the liquid oxygen chill down. So hopefully we'll begin here pretty quick.
And actually, per something that she said in one of the press conferences on L-2, launch minus 2 days here after the first scrub, is that liquid hydrogen ground support equipment chill down should also begin when they begin liquid oxygen chill down as well. That's a little bit of a change from Monday, pulling forward some of the LH2 operations in terms of chill down for temperature management ahead of the actual fuel loading, which still has to follow a very specific sequence because of the densities and temperatures differences between hydrogen and they just start at the same time that they do chill down of liquid oxygen. The only difference being the LH2 chill down will be GSE only, where liquid oxygen will start to configure the vehicle as well ahead of fueling.
Okay, and y'all, please remember, Chris is out in the field. He's actually there on the grass underneath our tent, by the clock, actually, the big clock out in the field. And if we get a couple little audio hiccups, we had just a little bit of an audio hiccup there, Chris, but it's because you're actually there. We don't have like a big, massive setup like NASA has, and we are on various types of networks. But if we get a little audio hiccup like that from the folks in the field, that's awesome, because they're actually in the field, and they're going to get to see this thing go live. Also,
you'll hear my scream on multiple microphones and cameras at some point.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's just a folding table and a tent. Like we're doing it live out here.
All right, and we've actually got some of the other cameras starting to click in. We focused on getting engineering cameras here, y'all. We didn't want to worry about the bitrate or the resolution that we're streaming in or anything. We wanted as many engineering cameras as we could, and we wanted to get them to you in as real time as possible. So we're set up for super low latency engineering camera goodness. I'm going to be switching between these as we go through, but I'm not kidding when I say engineering camera. Here's good old 814 looking at an umbilical. Thanks, NASA, for the brief SLS tour here. You can actually see the wedding ring, the wedding band on the right hand, I guess from this perspective, the right hand SRB. That's so you can tell on the top. You see the part. You see the black ring around the top, just under the pointy nose cone on the right-hand side there. We've also got the base of the rocket clicking in here. We're going to be going, wow. I don't know if I remember this feed from last time. Did we have 808 last time? I like it.
I don't remember 808.
I think it was in the loop at some point. So we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed that we can see the engines here when they start into the liquid oxygen chill downs. We might actually see a little bit of activity under the engine bells.
At any point, Philip, do they do like any kind of like wiggling or like TVC checks that we might be able to see?
Well, I hope we get there today. That won't be till 2 minutes and 30 seconds before liftoff, but I do hope we see that at some point.
Well, when we get there, make sure you yell if I need to switch to this specific engineering camera because they're going to wiggle. Feel free to yell at me, Philip. Be like, they're doing the check, switch.
Right. Yeah, we'll see. We will see. It would be nice to get down. It would be nice to get down there today.
And if I'm not mistaken, we've already passed a point, I guess not past the point that we didn't get to before, but on Monday, the beginning of tanking operations was actually delayed because of those storms that were just off the coast, lightning potentially coming into the area because you don't want to start putting fuel in the rocket and then have lightning come through, right? And we were a little delayed on Monday for the beginning of the tanking operations, and now since Charlie Blackwell Thompson has given the go-ahead, that means that we're already off to a good start, correct?
It
Yeah.
does, in terms of like, it definitely does in terms of like giving the teams as much time to either be directly on the timeline, and we hope that's what we have today. I would really love a boring tanking today. That
Right.
sets us up for the opening of the window.
Right, exactly. So we're just
yeah.
waiting for the launch window to open.
Exactly. But what it does in reality is it gives the team the entire amount of time that they have planned in the schedule for anything that might pop up. So there's normal troubleshooting time that's sort of built in with these built-in holds that gives them some wiggle room. There's some wiggle room in the fueling process because they don't end fueling right when they hit the hold at T-minus 10 minutes. So they do have some leeway even after they start tanking. If they should have an issue to stop tanking, there's still some leeway to still be on the timeline there. So yeah, it gives them the whole time to troubleshoot, which is the most important thing for a first-time flight vehicle making its second launch attempt.
All right, we're going to keep going through some questions here, y'all. Again, if you've got questions for us, tag us in chat. We have like 9 hours to answer your questions. So if we don't get it right away, please be patient with us. We may not get through all of them, but we're going to get through as many as we can. Let's see. Oh, now here is a question that was actually asked in one of the press conferences. Do we know if there will be any live views from the LCC, the Launch Control Center, during this broadcast? I think the answer was yes, right, Chris?
The answer is yes. I think that what happened on Monday, in all honesty, I don't offer this as an excuse. I offer this as I think this is what legitimately happened, is that there wasn't a plan to show the LCC during the fueling commentary, but there was to show it during the launch broadcast, because NASA was actually going to split those two broadcasts in half and into two different broadcasts. And since they never actually got to their launch broadcast, I think that plan just never materialized. So they just kept it with the engineering cameras. But the plan is to definitely show the LCC, show Charlie, show her team, and everything like that, just like we are used to from Apollo and Shuttle.
Gotcha, and that is what they said. It's just they were a little busy on Monday, but we hopefully not only see them working hard, concentrating, the faces of concentration back there in the LCC, but hopefully we also see them cheer when we get launched in separation, right?
Yes, there is a thing that used to happen here where they would pipe the audio sometimes from people, and the cheers you would hear, like when Apollo and Shuttle lifted off, were the teams, not just the people here on the ground. And there would be a large part of me that would really hope we do that, but they're also really consummate professionals, so I would also really understand if they didn't, because one thing that people don't think of a lot of, because your focus is on the rocket as soon as it lifts off, right? I mean, that's obvious, but for the launch team, all of their post-liftoff securing begins the moment the solid rocket boosters ignite, because you have to make sure that all of the valves on the ground side have stayed closed. You need to secure your propellant tanks. You need to secure pressure. You need to secure the sound suppression system. You need to safe the launch pad as soon as this thing starts to lift off. Like during Shuttle, you would literally hear them call SRB ignition, liftoff, all stations proceed to post-liftoff securing of the countdown. So like the team literally starts the securing process the moment SLS leaves the launch pad.
Absolutely. And I hope everybody's okay. Like, I keep getting my eye caught by this engineering camera panning around and looking at the struts that connect the SRB and stuff like that. So we're going to keep an eye on what NASA is looking at. But this is actually a thing. They have multiple high-definition cameras out there, and they're PTZ cameras, which means you can point them around remotely, and they actually use this to inspect for the teams different aspects of the rocket. They can zoom in. We saw them focus on the strut there. That's important. And they can look at different things and get this high-resolution imagery from up close and personal with the rocket. I'm a fan of remotely operated cameras, as you may know. So
no, Doss, you don't
no.
say. Oh, you've knocked me over with a feather. No, I'm kidding.
Exactly, right? But let's check in on this.
Oh,
go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, actually, I want to say something real quick about that, but that might be the question you were asking. Are you going to talk about the engineering cam a little bit more?
I was going to ask a different question, but let's talk about cameras. Twist my arm.
Yeah, right. So for those of you who remember the previous program with the space shuttle, right, they would fuel the rocket, and then they would send a team of 8 people out. They were called the ICE team. And these people would literally go and start at the top, and they would work their way down the entire stack on the fixed service structure, and they would look for ice buildup, and they would monitor how the external tank had done during fueling operations. Well, technology has increased to the point where we don't need to send people. All these ultra high definition cameras can do it for them. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the ICE team doing their pre-fueling inspection baseline of what SLS looks like. And after she's fully fueled, you'll see all these cameras move again. It's the ICE team. They're just in the Launch Control Center now because we don't have to send them out there and endanger them because technology can be their eyes for them now.
Thoroughly replaced by robots.
Not replaced.
Not
Right.
replaced. That was
Not
it. I was going to go
replaced.
there.
But it's I mean the final inspection team. It also basically allows them to continue to scan the vehicle during the sort of before we get to sort of a steady state when all the tanks are full. They can continue to scan the vehicle during this entire time, and so we saw a little bit of that on Monday as well. So we'll have to see. We'll be watching them pan and tilt today again.
Is anyone else getting like a surreal kind of vibe from these views? It's like I don't know, maybe I'm just a child of the 90s, but I feel like I'm looking at a model like in some sort of like space camp themed 80s movie. I don't know.
This is like watching a shuttle launch countdown during the 80s.
Yep.
That's amazing. It's really beautiful.
It almost seems like a drawing or a rendering or an animation or something like that. Like, we're so not used to seeing this up close. The lighting is fantastic right now. I can't wait till it starts venting. You get vapors cascading off the side and all that sort of stuff. But it really is fantastic. I'm so glad we have these close-in engineering cameras to bring us up close and personal with the rocket.
For real.
And I want to take that moment to say, yeah, I love that we have these two. And Doss and Michael, you're the reason we've got these. So thank you to both of you for the insane amount of work you put in to make this possible.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'll correct you, Chris. Chat and the viewers are the reason we have this. It would not be very much fun for me to go out there if I didn't have hardware to install. We ran a bunch of fiber optic cables to bring the NASA video feeds in through real time. We have a bunch of new video switching equipment. We have more robotic cameras, like all the technology we have out there. I could have showed up with like a toothbrush and $1 million smile and wouldn't have been able to do anything without the support of chat, who helps us financially so that we can afford to bring these things in. So I'm reading what you're putting down, but I also want to say thank you very much to chat for supporting everything we do. Speaking of which...
Well, I was going to say you perfectly picked up what I was putting down because I was hoping you would be the one to thank them. Yes.
Absolutely. Hey, let's just say that I like being able to go to Home Depot and spend some money on some stuff so we can bring more camera reviews to people.
He really does like going to Home Depot, guys.
It's true. Not a lot of video fiber equipment at Home Depot, though. We got to get those online. So, speaking of support, folks, we already have a ton of new members and super chats here in the program. Moses, thank you so much for becoming a pad rat. Susan Adams is a pad rat as well. Jeff Hash became a red team member 2010. I think that's how we pronounce that. Thank you so much for becoming a pad rat. Nick Barker is on the red team, not the ice team. Not going to have to visit the rocket. I think that is actually what our red team is named after. We're not like
Yes,
the
it
red.
is.
away team or anything like
It's
that.
not the
like Star
red
Trek.
shirts, no.
Okay, good. Whew, those are two different things. Shailene Lawrence as well, also on the red team. And also, folks, if you get one of those gifted subs, YouTube has a really cool program where you can actually share the love. You can gift subs to other random people that are watching. So if you get one of those gifted subs, make sure you thank the person who gave it to you. YouTube will pop up a little button for you, and there's like a share thing. If you'd like, you can actually click that, and it'll post in chat, thanks to such and such for the gifted membership. That is another great way that not only you can enjoy the membership program, but you can gift others a 1-month membership to all of our behind-the-scenes content. We've actually had a lot of behind-the-scenes setup video. I don't know, Jack, if Jack is still on here, but Jack has been recording some setup behind-the-scenes. I think I'm going to use the term shenanigans is probably the best way to talk about that. I think Jack might have stepped away for now, but that is the sort of content that's available to the member program, right, Jack?
I'm here. Sorry, you came through spotty for me for a second there. What was the all kinds of behind the scenes content? Are you talking about when I got left behind at Pad 39B?
Yes, that video, please.
Yeah, that exists. You can become a member and watch that video. If you don't want just sheer goofiness too, I've been recording videos, little quickie things of remote setup and remote pickup and stuff like that. So there is also, informative and interesting behind the scenes content in addition to me almost getting left behind at the launch pad and screaming about it.
Like some
And I
actual
think-
work.
Some actual work.
And I think too, Jack, we've got one for today too. Like we've got a behind the scenes that we shot the other day for a requested nose boop of a rocket, if I'm correct, right?
Yep, that exists.
Weren't y'all hanging out with Daryl?
Yeah. There was a request that Daryl and I do a dual SLS nose boop. So yep, we met Daryl at the press site and did the nose boop. So we've got that video and we've got that photo that we'll release as we go through the count here today.
Excellent. So, long story short, y'all, that is another cool thing you can get from the membership program there. And I'm not kidding. There is literally video of Jack running after a bus out near the pad. Apparently, they thought that he was with somebody else, and the bus started to pull away, and Jack was recording on his phone, running after the media bus that had taken him out there to do remote setup, I think. So, that's what you can get behind the scenes with the membership program. Let's see, another question. I guess I got a couple questions here. Did they fix the problem? That's a pretty open-ended question, isn't it?
So in a way, there was no problem to fix
for the Engine 3 bleed, which is not Engine 3, but a core stage sensor issue. And there wasn't really anything to fix there because the sensor is broken, so they're just as long as all the sensors in the actual liquid hydrogen tank of the core stage and the sensors that are actually in the engines, as long as all of those are in agreement, they're just going to ignore the faulty sensor today, which is a totally normal procedure of what NASA does once a sensor is determined to be out of family. If it's not one of your launch commit criteria sensors, which it is not, they can just ignore it. Because the ground launch sequencer, the automatic launch sequencer on the rocket, basically automatic launch sequencer or ALS is the rocket's onboard flight computers. They do not look at this sensor for anything for the engine. So nothing to fix there. The issue they did have to fix was the leak of hydrogen in the purge can of the liquid hydrogen tail service mast umbilical. They did go back out, as Philip mentioned earlier in our broadcast. They opened up that purge can. They did find a little bit of unseating and a little bit of looseness in the bolts that torque everything in that area. They retorqued them. And the last time they retorqued them, that worked for wet dress rehearsal 4, and it didn't leak. So the expectation is that it is fixed. However, you cannot test liquid hydrogen seals until you actually start flowing liquid hydrogen through it because of the extremely cold temperatures. You can do all the ambient testing you want. You're not going to actually know if that seal is fixed until you flow cryos through it.
Right, and that is a big part of it. I mean, one of the reasons they discovered that issue on Monday is because they hadn't gotten quite that far during that wet dress rehearsal. So Monday was almost like a wet dress rehearsal with a chance of launch, had everything gone correctly. Yeah, and when everything did not go correctly, they ended up doing something that they may have caught in testing had that previous dress rehearsal gone all the way through to where they had thought it should have been. So that may be the same sort of thing today. I don't think that NASA would be here saying that it was a potential for launch if they didn't think that there was a potential that this rocket would go off the pad today. But again, they are going to be stepping through parts of the process that they haven't 100% demonstrated on the actual launch pad with the actual rocket in the actual conditions. You know, they've done the testing at Stennis. They've worked with these engines for years. The SRBs, the systems, like so many of these things are these sort of proven legacy hardware, but it's never been this specific rocket that they built on this specific pad that they built on this specific environment, weather, etc., etc. So they're going to continue stepping through all of that as they continue to do right now, and we are going to see how it turns out today. Philip, where are we at right now, by the way?
Sorry, I just want to say beautifully put, Doss. Beautifully put. It is a shuttle-derived vehicle, but you need to think of it as a brand new vehicle.
Yeah,
absolutely. It largely is, especially in terms of, you know, almost all the other hardware and software, especially the flight software, which people don't necessarily think of when you're looking at this. But there's a computer network on there that's for the spacecraft, the upper stage, and then the core stage and the boosters. They all have their own, you know, network of computers that fly these different parts of the flight. So just a quick update. Alex in the back is helping us out with listening to what Daryl's providing for NASA TV, and the chill down of both the liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen transfer lines is underway. They will, as Chris G was saying, they're gonna the nominal loading process is to start with liquid oxygen into the core stage, and then they will start with liquid hydrogen in the core stage, and then liquid hydrogen generally finishes quicker, so then they will start filling the ICPS, which is the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, which is basically the second stage of the SLS. They'll start liquid hydrogen on the ICPS, and then finally, because liquid oxygen is much more dense than liquid hydrogen and takes longer to load, they will load the liquid oxygen tank on the ICPS. So they've got this modified propellant loading procedure today. They're chilling down the transfer lines on both commodities, and basically you have these gigantic hundreds of thousands of gallons of liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen spheres, and they're on opposite sides of the launch pad area, and you've got these long cross-country lines that then converge on the mobile launcher, and so basically they are flowing some of that propellant towards the mobile launcher and towards the core stage to get into propellant loading.
Okay.
How are we looking from a weather perspective? When's the last time we got a weather update here?
Yes, so the last official weather update we got from the 45th Space Wing basically said basically said there was a non-zero chance, but an unlikely chance that weather would interfere with the tanking operations. You have to have a less than 20% chance of lightning within 5 nautical miles. I hate nautical miles. Basically within 10 kilometers of the rocket. You cannot have a chance of lightning greater than 20%. We are not in violation of that today, as we were on Monday, so tanking and fueling operations have picked up. So we don't have any concerns with that right now, but they'll continue to monitor that as they move through the tanking process. Then from the weather office, it is officially opening of the window, 60% chance of good weather, increasing to an 80% chance by the close of the window. But there was a brief report that came out last night from some of the other folks who are involved with this now that were saying that the weather models at about, excuse me, totally got a frog in my throat there, that the weather models around 9 p.m. last night were indicating much drier conditions over the Cape than had initially been forecast, and that things from those models seemed to really be trending in the correct direction for weather. So that's the latest update we've got. Florida is always dynamic. I'm just going to warn everyone now. Lived here for 34 years. I've seen so many forecasts that say no rain, and it totally rains. So that doesn't mean we won't get a spotty shower. That doesn't mean we might not. That doesn't mean, oh, weather's going to be great and green for the duration of the window. We could have moments where we are technically red for weather, but the overall forecast indicates that if the rocket is ready from a technical standpoint, we should be able to lift off from a weather standpoint
I
today.
really like that we were just able to get into tanking because I know there is that weather constraint right at the start of tanking, but not all the way through. So if
Right.
we get through that portion of tanking where there could be like a, what was it? It's a lightning constraint.
It's a lightning constraint,
Right.
yeah.
For the
And
first
so-
hour.
Yeah, so I like that we're getting started early today. I like that things are looking good. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling optimistic. I don't know if anybody actually cares, but I'm feeling good.
And it is just starting to get light on the eastern horizon, so so hopefully SLS's final terrestrial sunrise is upon her.
Right. And we're about an hour away on the timeline from the countdown clock picking up again. So the clock's supposed to pick up, I believe, at 7:07 a.m. Eastern or 11:07 UTC would be when we should start to see the clock moving again. And then we would be down to just a 30-minute hold at T-minus 10 minutes. We held at 40 minutes on Monday, but we're not expecting to see that today.
In fact, we really don't want to see that today.
That's
'cause
right.
That is not a planned hold point. So we really
That's
don't
right.
want to see a hold from 6 hours 40 minutes. We want to see that clock count down to 10 minutes. That's what we want to see for SLS.
That's right. And we'll know before then. There's I think they said around 8 a.m. Eastern time, which would be 12 noon UTC, would be around the time when we would get into the liquid hydrogen bleed again, and we'll see what they get when they get there. So, but yeah, it sounds like that's good news that we have a little bit of a drier atmosphere, and hopefully that will give them more flexibility in terms of when finding the right spot in the window where there's no COLA's collision avoidance cutouts. So, and maybe that'll be right at the opening today. That would be kind of cool.
Hopefully, yeah.
That was another thing we talked about. I think we got a specific update from the launch team in terms of what the COLAs are. If y'all don't understand, a COLA, you're not aware of the term, COLA is a collision avoidance, right?
Yes.
Is that what it stands for? COLA, collision, C-O-L-A?
Collision avoidance, C-O-L from collision, and then A from avoidance. Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering if I needed to fill in the O and L, or they it's one of those weird acronyms that's not really an acronym.
Exactly. NASA speak.
NASA speak. If you think about it, you've got things in space, right, that are flying around up above the rocket. We've got satellites, we've got space junk, spent rocket stages from 50, 60 years of launching things into space now. There are things up in orbit, and we track an awful lot of it. We need to make sure that when we launch the rocket, we don't launch it in such a way that it's going to pass uncomfortably close to a known satellite or a known piece of space debris. And so when we talk about COLAs, we're talking about points in the count, or points in the launch window, I guess is the right way to say it, where you can't launch because there might be something in your way. And you're sort of like, wait, what do you mean might be in the way? Like, you should know where the rocket's going to go, and you should know where the piece of junk is or the satellite is, and you should know 100% if you're going to hit it or not. A lot of these things are sort of like updates. We have an error bars, like a degree of certainty exactly where this piece of junk, especially with inert pieces of junk as opposed to active satellites that are talking back to us, right? But we've got some places where we know there's a piece of junk, a spent rocket stage from 1989 or something like that, that's up there. And we're pretty sure it's in this area, but they give it a little bit of a wide berth, right? Like a little bit of an area around it. So these COLAs that we talk about are areas where they don't want to launch because there may be something uncomfortably close to the rocket's trajectory. And Chris, what was the number of COLAs that we got back from the team there?
So the number that I got from Charlie was 45. There are 45 cutouts in today's window. I think they said 46 in the press conference, but the email I got that came from Charlie said there are 45 cutouts in our window for today. 35 of them are single second, 2 second cutouts, exactly what you were just saying. Like, oh, we need to go around this little piece of space junk, and because of how fast things move, literally waiting 1 second, yeah, it's 7.8 meters per second. There you go. Do the math, on that. So sometimes waiting a second is all you need. And then there are 10 in the window that are on the magnitude of 1 minute in duration. But they're very, very small. So it's, and basically if we got to that point, like you probably wouldn't even hear the call outs over the net. The team would just go, okay, we're going to target this time to avoid the cutout, but they probably won't even say that over the comm loops today.
And of course,
Yeah,
if
right.
you're in the Midwest, the cola is known as pop.
Oh my gosh. Can somebody mute Jack's mic? Actually, that's me. I can mute Jack's mic.
That sounds like Jack did.
I've also got a bit of info in the back channel here. I was wondering if it was COLA, like collusion avoidance, and apparently COLA might also stand for Collision on Launch Assessment. COLA. I don't know if anybody's heard that, but I got a DM from a little birdie who would know, and said that they've heard Collusion on Launch Assessment. Chat, have y'all heard one or the other?
Interesting. I
Yeah.
have not heard the second one. I've only heard it referred to as
Like
collision avoidance.
Collision avoidance, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, we're
Everybody-
usually listening on launch day. I think they're going to always kind of just shorten it to. I mean, the reason they throw these acronyms all around is so they don't have to say about 10 words. Instead, they can just use the acronym.
But to be fair, 6 of 1, whether it's collision avoidance or
Right.
whatever you said there, DOS. For
Collision
the other
on
one,
Launch Assessment.
collision on launch assessment. Either way, 6 of 1, we're talking about the exact same thing in that regard.
Yeah.
Only for the launch, it's the launch vehicle that has to do the adjustment. Whereas if you're 2 satellites on orbit that need to do a collision avoidance, you've got to pick which one you move out of the way of the other.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And they have all those. That is part of what the ground launch sequencer operator does. Is in this case, it's a he today, and he will have loaded all of those into the computer, and basically so that the computer will if he wanted to pick up the clock at T-minus 10 minutes, and we're going to line up right on one of these cutouts. The clock would probably just tell him, that the earliest we can pick up is this particular second. So
Right.
It sort of allows them to automate a little bit of that, and the Space Force is tracking all of this debris in low Earth orbit, and they'll pass along more information to I believe it's the Johnson Space Center, Mission Control, and then Mission Control will pass that along to the launch team during the countdown if necessary.
Makes sense. Hey, y'all, I want to address a couple things on the screen and in chat right quick. I know we see the flame in the lower right-hand part of your screen. That's normal. It's supposed to be there.
In fact,
it's
it's
burn
a
off stack,
major
right?
exactly. It's the major safety thing that allows us to actually load liquid hydrogen into the vehicle. That is the hydrogen burn-off stack. So you will see it right now. That's sort of its quiescent, normal look. You will see this thing flare at some times, especially as they're working through like closing valves, opening valves as they go through the fueling process. So if you suddenly see that flame get like 30 feet, 10 meters higher, totally normal. Don't panic. And to be fair, once the sun's up, you won't see it. So you can only see it at night. So that is what it is. And we want that lit right now because that means we are going for liquid hydrogen loading.
Okay, and one other thing, folks. The fire is normal. That's supposed to be there. And also, the clock is currently correct. That is a T-minus time up there. It is not an L-minus time. The difference being the T-minus time is the countdown time that the rocket and rocket team are sort of following in their, let's just say, like, here's their order of operations, the steps and the timings that they use to actually launch the rocket, versus the L-minus time counting down to the beginning of the window. So that is a T-minus time. It is currently correctly holding at T-minus 6 hours and 40 minutes there. And when that count picks up, we should see it start to update there as well. We're actually pulling that clock directly from NASA. And